Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Agsan and my partner is Iqbar. In this section, we would like to present our material about observing the result of the plan and reflecting and planning for further action. So, enjoy our presentation. As we know, action research is a sequence of action and reflection. In other words, the researcher should start by examining and analyzing right from the beginning very dynamically. So there are 4 steps to observing the result. The first is preparing for data analysis. The second is analyzing and synthesizing qualitative data. The third is analyzing and synthesizing quantitative data. And the last is make sure that your conclusion is trustworthy. Well, the first thing should researcher do to observe the result of the plan is preparing for data analysis. So, in preparing data analysis, the researcher should be away from the hostile and bustle situation of the classroom in order to make your results is more objective. Other than that, focus to research question is also needed. So, in doing data analysis, the researcher should do a continuing process because there is no instant way to analyze the action research data. Moreover, the researcher should take out the key meanings and messages and filter what data are actually telling about. The researcher can sketch out other ideas, build up personal theories, and find some new possibilities for classroom practice in further cycle. There are 5 general useful steps to preparing for data analysis. The first is assembling the data, the second is coding the data, the third is comparing the data, the fourth is building meaning and interpretation from the data, and the last is reporting the result. On the other hand, the researcher also should understand how to analyze and synthesize data of qualitative data. So, as we know, qualitative data is all about no number analysis, and therefore the researcher can find the results from journal or diary entries, interview, recordings, classroom interaction between students and all the researcher, and also the observation notes. So the main tool to analyzing qualitative data are categorizing and analyzing talk. So categorizing the data here means sorting objects and information into logical groupings. Usually, the qualitative data categorizing through inductive coding, or we know it as AMIC approach. It means the researcher should scan the data carefully and should be several times to see what categories are appear from the data. In other words, the inductive coding means the data creates the categories, but in opposite, deductive coding creates the categories first, and the data are added to the categories after that. Moreover, in essence, coding actually means that the researcher find right ways from their confusedness. The first thing the researcher do is to collect the data from, for example, from journal or interview results. Then the researcher read the data more than a few times to catch actually what the data about, and the researcher possibly can underline or highlight some interesting or unexpected informations. The next, researcher should give a label from the subject matter that is being expressed. Then make a list for different initial categories on a sheet of paper or computer. Then the researcher should group the initial categories more into the subcategories. So from the main categories to the subcategories, and it's related to the category level to the main category. The subcategory should be related to the main categories. And after all those steps, the researcher can consult the result to their colleagues. Besides categorizing, analyzing talk is also important to analyze qualitative data. Well, in analyzing talk, the researcher possibly deals with recording or transcript to get the data deeper. Furthermore, the original transcript is probably becomes stronger to the interpretation of the data. Besides, the most important aspect of analyzing talk is to listen deeply what speakers say. Additionally, there are 4 steps to analyze talk. The first is providing general characterization. The second is identifying distinguishingly obvious features. The third is focusing in on structural elements, and the last is developing a description. In providing general characterization, the researcher first should listen to what participants said in general and write the general idea as well. Next, when identifying distinguishingly obvious features, the researcher should look more closely to obvious features. Then note in specific number of speakers, what they are saying, what kind of thing that they are talking about, and etc. Then, in focusing in on structural elements means the researcher should understand the structure of the conversation. In other words, the researcher should write the conversation or the transcript orderly or analyze the structure of the conversation. And the last is developing a description. So in this step, the researcher should write the description in objective ways. Well, after discussing about qualitative data, now move to quantitative data. So, as we know, quantitative data is all about analyzing in numerical form. Well, there are 2 ways to analyze the quantitative data. The first is nominal scale, and the second is descriptive statistic. Scales consist of nominal scale, ordinal scale, and interval scale. In nominal scale, it's all about the real number to categorize the groups of the data. For example, we assign 1 for male, 2 for female, and then the ordinal scale is about ordering the data across a continuum number. For example, ranks or rating of the film. And the interval scale ranks the number and describe the interval distance of each categories. For example, 1 for very often, 2 for often, 3 for quite often, 4 for rarely, and 5 for never. And honestly, the difference between interval scale and ordinal scale is interval scale provides the dynamic distance for each categories, while ordinal scale no. Meanwhile, descriptive statistics provides 2 ways to understand: measure of central tendency and measure of dispersion or variability. Measures of central tendency means a single value is given to a set of quantitative data. The number shows the sets of data collected around in center points. There are three ways to reduce the numbers. They are mean, median, and mode. Mean. Mean average. So to find the mean, the researcher should collect the data and add the number of items all, and then divide it by the number of items. For example, in slide 15, there are 20 numbers and there are from 8 to 2. You should add them up and divide it by 20. And you will find the mean. There are 5.3. However, mean has still a limitation to be calculated. Well, for example, if we find decimal points, it's not reflect to the real life. If for example, we find that the book student need to study is, we find the mean result is 1.67, and it's impossible, right? If one student gets 1.67 books. So another example of problem is, for example, you find the mean that the students need 3 books for study, but not all students need 3 books, isn't that? Perhaps some students only need 1 or more than 3 books. So here, median comes for overcome these problems. Median is we call as the middle of a set of number arranged from the lowest to the highest level. So to find the median, you should first you should do is to arrange from the lowest to the highest level of number, and then you can find the middle of the number. For example, in the slide 16, you find 15 numbers at that slide. So you find 15 numbers and you can find the middle of the number, the middle of the sets of number. It's the eight numbers. And remember, you should arrange from the lowest to the highest first. If not, you can't find the median. However, it seems easy when the set of number is odd. But if the set of number is even, for example, you have 16 numbers, so how could you find the median? Well, it's also quite easy actually. You should find the middle of the number from 16 number. They are the 8th number and the 9th number. Is that? And what should you do for those two numbers? You add them up and divide it by 2. That's you'll find. Move to mode. Mode is actually the number is the most popular or frequent number appears in a set of data. For example, we have in the slide 17, you find there are 20 numbers and the most frequent numbers that appear there is 6. It appears 3 times. Then you find the mode. The useful thing about mode is it can tell you what is typical, usual, or normal. On the other hand, there are still one measures. It's measures of dispersion or variability. There are 2 ways to analyze measure of dispersion. They are range and standard deviation. While range range informs the researcher how many points individuals are spread from the center, and the range gives the researcher clearest pictures when all the scores relatively grouped together. Well, to find the range, the researcher should identify the largest and the smallest numbers and then subtract them. The researcher will find the range number. However, the standard deviation is quite long to discuss about the formula of standard deviation. Well, standard deviation starts from the mean. You should find the mean first, and you can find the description or the formula in the slide 18 slides. Hope you find them. Here we go. The last step of observing the result of the plan is make sure that your conclusion is trustworthy. There are 4 steps of this step, 4 sub-steps. So the first is keep the pedagogical focus in research mind. So the researcher should make sure that the focus of the research, the question that asked, the method that's used to collect the data, and the way to analyze the data should be focused on to improve education in the same problems. So therefore, the researcher also keep to improve the reliability through giving attention to the ethical principles, such as make sure that the participant understand about the research and asking permission, also manage the participant to cooperate with the researcher. So the second thing is use more than one sources of data. As we know, it's called as triangulation. So usually the researcher use this kind of way to strengthen their research. It means that the researcher involves participant opinion in order to minimize the biases or researcher's own assumption. The third is immerse yourself in the data. Some researchers probably can't get the data what they are expected. Therefore, to filter and analyze and make sure that the data are reliable, the researcher should discuss findings with colleagues, talk to participants, reread the data more than a few times, goes back to the literature that's related to their topic, read another action research, and goes back to review their research question. And the last is maintain objectivity and perspective. Well, sometimes the researcher can't find what they are looking about from the data, and it's quite frustrating. So through going back to the data several times and using the previous techniques above, the researcher can decide how to handle these aspects of the research. Besides, the researcher can also provide the deep description of the context and examine and reflect the data openly and honestly and explain the specific details of their research. Well, I think that's enough from me. The next will be continued by Iqbal.